Hello, this is Edith Carnley, and yes, this is yet another mask making video. But this video is basically for those of you that have asked me how I make my masks. The masks I've been making are these fitted type masks. It does have a little fitted nose piece with the elastic that goes around the ear. I've been making those for men, women, and even smaller ones for children, and Lord willing, it's helped them, it's protected them in some way. So I want to tell you a little bit about how I developed my pattern. I claim no great design. I kind of gleaned from a lot of other people. The first lady that I looked at that I got my pattern from was somebody said Ren DIY. I couldn't understand a word she was saying. She was an Asian lady, but I would follow along with her, and it seemed to work fine. I also looked at Cindy Rang's video. She's from the Fabric Patch, and she's also a nurse, and she had some good things to say on how to make the mask. Also looked at Jessica Nandino's instructable mask that she used to go over the N95 masks in hospitals. And if you're going to make masks for hospitals, really I suggest that you find out what kind of mask they want, because it looks like different hospitals want different things. And there's an interesting video by Sewstine MD. She actually respirator test fit 4 masks, and one of them passed her test, or their test, and it was made with that halyard 600 fabric that the hospitals have on hand. So with that said, let's just kind of get on with it. This is the pattern. If you print this pattern out, just make sure that it has the same measurement. This back edge, the side by the ear, should measure about 3 5/16 inches. And this is the side that goes by the ear. This is actually the side that goes around the center front. And there is a grain line there. It kind of goes with a straight grain along the ear part. If you can't find interfacing, because everything is really hard to get now, interfacing and elastic. If you can't get interfacing, you may be able to use these polypropylene bags that you get from different companies. Sometimes they're just advertising their company in the front, but they will work pretty good as well. You can use a couple layers of that and just get creative with elastic. You may have to use ponytail holders or something, because it's kind of hard to get now. And I did mention in the video that my little iron was steam fresh. It's not steam fresh, it's steam fast. Anyway, that's enough about that. Let's get on with the instructions. So once you get your pattern, what you'll need to do is cut out the pieces, and you'll need to cut 2 pieces of interfacing. This is Pellon 50, and so it's kind of thick, so I'm only using 2 pieces. If you're using mid-weight like Pellon 40 or 30, you're going to want to cut out 4 of these. If you're using featherweight Pellon, you're going to probably cut out 6 to 8, just making it thick enough to kind of filter out. This interfacing is the stuff that's going to act kind of like your filter in the mask, and we're just sewing it right in. You're going to need to have 2 pieces of what I call fashion fabric. It's just something to make it fun. It doesn't have to, whatever fabric. I choose cotton fabric, 100% cotton, because it's breathable. And then you're going to have some lining fabric, and that's what these pieces are here. They're just plain old cotton. You can use cotton muslin. This is bleach muslin. I purposely use a plain color on the inside of the mask, so that when you're wearing the mask, you always know which side is the inside or the wrong side. So you can put that against your face. You're going to need 2 pieces of elastic. I use a little bit longer elastic. These 2 pieces are 1/4 inch wide and 12 inches long. I also do something a little different. I cut out a piece of featherweight interfacing. This is 1/2 inch wide, 6 3/4 inches long. And you're also going to need a piece of 16 to 18 gauge wire. Galvanized wire is probably your best choice. And this serves as the piece that kind of snugs the mask up to your nose. And I'll show you how to bend the ends so that they're not so sharp. And so once you have those pieces, you're ready to sew. Okay, so first I'm going to show you how to bend the wire so that the points aren't rough and they don't hurt the person wearing the mask or poke through the fabric. So we have to take one of these ends, and I'm going to take a needle nose pliers and just stick it halfway around the nose, and then I'm just going to twist my needle nose pliers around to the center, and I'll get a shape that starts to curve. And I'll do the same thing with the other side, making sure that I'm curving in the same direction, because if we have one curving, they need to be on the same plane. So let me kind of go ahead and do this one. One way that I try to check it is I put it down and I look at it and see if it lays flat. If it lays flat and I can see both curves, I know that I'm halfway okay. And if it's not, I can kind of use the pliers and straighten it out. Oops, and I can't even open the pliers. There we go. Okay, then I'm going to take these other pliers. These are also wire cutters. I got them at Dollar Tree. They're not expensive. And they have these little teeth inside of them that'll kind of grab the wire loop. And when you pinch it, you'll see that it kind of closes it tight. And I'm going to close it a little tighter. Oops, get to where you can see it. And you see that I check it with my finger to make sure it's not rough. And then I want to do the same thing to the other side. And I'm just going to straighten it because I can see where it is kind of crooked. One side came out better. Again, I'm going to lay it down, and it looks like it's pretty decent, so I'm going to leave it. And so again, I have my little ends turned in so that we can use this in the mask. The other thing I do is sometimes give it a little gentle curve there so that when I stick it into the mask, it begins to take that nose shape. So before we get started, let me show you the order of the layering of the mask. This is the fashion fabric, like I call it. And then I have the interfacing, which is that filter part. If this wasn't the heavyweight Pellon, if I was using a medium or even a featherweight, all my layers would go right in there. And then I have 2 more layers, which is the cotton, 2 pieces of the cotton. And that's basically the sandwich that you're going to make with the mask. So let's begin with the lining. With what I like to do is first kind of sew on one end of the lining right along here, just to kind of help me hold it down. One video I saw, they flatlined the whole thing, but we're not going to do that much work. It's not that kind of thing. So I'm going to just stitch the back or the side that goes to the ear. I'm not even going to back stitch. And then I'm going to take the other piece as well. And again, that just helps me hold the pieces down. Now I'm going to, I like to clip my threads, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Some people like to work messy. I'm not going to work messy. So I put these two together. Now the thing about the inside of the mask, the area in here is going to be just slightly smaller than the outside area. So when I stitch this, I'm actually going to stitch it 3/8 inch, not a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I've got them together. If you think you need to pin it down, pin it down. But then I bring it to the machine. And in my machine, this presser foot, the edge of the presser foot is about a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to go a little further out for my 3/8 of an inch. And I am going to back stitch so that it holds its place. And then just go ahead and stitch that curved area. That's the center front of your mask. Now you could get fancy here and iron this all out, but I'm not going to. I'm just simply going to finger press and see and because this is stitched down on this side, it kind of wants to stay in place for you a little bit. So you see I've already got the roundness of the mask, and I'm going to open this and just do what I call finger press. If you want to go through the trouble of ironing it, you're welcome to it. The next thing I do with this is I top stitch these seams open, and because the mask, this is the inside and it will be curved this way, I'm going to work from the front so that when I stick it under the machine it kind of keeps that curve, and I'm just going to spread out the seam allowance as I stitch. So I'm not going to use an iron. And I check underneath it to make sure that my seam is open, and I just stitch it down. Oops, almost got it. Almost. Okay. And then I'm going to do the other side. And I'm stitching about 1/8 of an inch away from the seam line. So if you want to, and it's just a top stitch. And there's your mask. You know, that is not the way it's going to be used. It's going to be used like that. So, and there's the back of it. And so now we can do the same thing to the front of the mask. Now with the front of the mask, I'm going to grab my pieces of interfacing and fashion, and I'm going to line those up. And again, if this was more than one layer, I would do it at this point. That's just because I would do. Looks like, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go by my interfacing because that's my most accurate cut. So I'm going to stitch it down on the ends just to hold it in place. And I'm going to get my next one too. I know I do that. I don't cut it until... Okay. It's my flat lining cheater. Okay. Okay, so I have those pieces together. Okay, now I'm going to put these right sides together, And I'm going to make sure that my edges at the bottom, this is the bottom of the mask, are pretty much straight, and that mostly my interfacing is lining up together, and it seems to be. And again, I'm going to stitch it at 1/4 of an inch around this center front part. And I'm going to back stitch here because it is going to get a little bit of a pull when you turn it around. Okay. And just like we did for the lining, we're going to kind of finger press it and add another piece. So when I open it up, again, this is going to be a little smaller, but I'm going to finger press it all the way up. The nice thing about the heavyweight fabric too is it kind of gives a little bit more body to the mask. Okay. Now one thing I'm going to do, because this mask will be worn this way, I'm going to stitch on that side. That's actually the front of the mask. Now there's something that I do that's a little different from the others that I've seen. I figure that, you know, we have all this here that's sealing these, you know, things from getting in, but we have this seam here, and I thought maybe it might be a good idea to close up that seam or that little opening there. So as I'm top stitching this seam open, I'm going to lay down the strip in this area. So let's go for it. And again, I'm going 1/8 inch in from the center of the seam. Let me turn it the right side. There it goes. Can feel a little tricky, but you can do it. And you kind of gotta go blind, but I'm using the first edge here is about 1/8 of an inch, and against the seam allowance, and that's what I'm going to use. So this part is a little trickier. Just making sure that it's all open. And as you can see, it goes a little slower because we're laying that piece in. And then we're going to do the same thing. You can see we have top stitched the front. We're going to do the same thing to the other side. And the other side will be a little easier because you've already kind of gotten the flat for the other. And I'm always checking underneath to make sure my seam is open. So at this point, you should have two pieces that have this curve to it, the front piece, and it'll look like it's top stitch, but it's actually holding down another little seal in there. And then we have this inside piece. So we have to connect this piece to this piece. And so how we do that is we take and we put right sides together. And the first thing we do is match seam to seam. And I'm going to use some pins to put it there. And I'm going to go in this end. I do pin a little bit. I pin the center and then I pin the ends. And then when I'm stitching, I actually kind of pull this lining down to meet the edge there. And you see that it looks like it's a little shorter, but it should be. It should be like that. Because again, when you turn it inside out, you're going to have, you won't have that pucker that wants to happen because there's excess fabric there. Okay, and I'm going to sew it at 1/4 of an inch in. And I'm going to back stitch quite a bit here because I'm going to kind of pre-cut those corners there before we turn it inside out. So I've got 1/4 of an inch. And like I said, I back stitch a lot right there. And then if you see me picking up the presser foot every now and then, it's just to kind of get that ease of the fabric. You see it tends to want to kind of gather. And we'll go over here. Okay, and then again, I might pull this side down just so that I can see. Okay, and so we have the top side sewn down, and so now we have to sew the bottom side. Now you see it looks like it's shorter, but that's okay. That's the way it's supposed to be. Force it to the edge. I just kind of push it down a little bit, and then match my seams and my edges, and I pin that center part there and the edges again. And then I'm going to stitch at 1/4 of an inch, back stitching on my ends again. And I know I back stitch a lot, but I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, there it goes. Back stitch there, and I'm going to back stitch a little higher where I might cut. Bottom is a little easier because it's on a straight edge. So there we go. Okay. A lot of your mask is put together at this point. Now we've got to do a little bit of clipping and trimming. So the first thing I do is I bend it right at the seam. I kind of close my mask and bend it there. And I clip these points because it just makes a lot of bulk for when you're turning it around. And now don't cut your seam. If you cut your seam, that's you're going to have to start over. So I kind of just clip out some of that excess bulk right there at that tip. And I do the same thing at the bottom. Just do a little angle cut. I also clip the corners. I can do this with the other scissors better. I just kind of clip this corner so when I turn this around, I don't have as much bulk in that corner. So I kind of pre-clip my corners there. And that's why I do more back stitching in there. The other thing you have to do is clip your curves. So you're just going to have to go every now and then and clip your curves so that when you turn it in the other direction, that seam won't pull and you'll get a clean edge there. Just remember not to clip across your stitching. If you clip across your stitching, you got to go back and sew it again because it'll come loose in those spots. So. See, I just want to show you what happens when that seam goes inside. See the little gaps that it's making? That's what it's going to do on the inside when you're turning it in. So you want to give it that room so that it's not pulling on the seam. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn it inside out. And so I just take the edge and fold it over and just keep shoving that fabric in there, and then eventually you can go ahead and just grab it and pull it out, pull it through. Okay. And it's starting to look like a mask. Okay, so there you go. So now I do iron. I'm going to iron these edges. I'll show you that as well. And then we have to put the wire in and close up these edges for the elastic. So let's get to set up with the iron. Alright, I have this little mini quilting iron. You can certainly use a regular iron in this board, but I have this little steam fresh iron that you can get in lots of places now. But I kind of like using it for this because I can keep it right next to my sewing machine, obviously. So what I do is I kind of open it up. I want to get this seam as flat as I can. So I'll iron it, and I iron it towards that lining side because I don't care if that has a line in it or not. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to iron it the seam flat as I can. And there's a little steam. I forgot about the steam. It's actually a good little iron. Okay, so once I've got that pretty much flat, then I can open it and give it a nice flat press. And it's one of the first videos I saw, they top stitched everything. The edges were top stitched. I just kind of skipped that step because I just figure it's just that much more to do and takes me that much longer to build a mask. So I just iron it. It's enough. It stays. Yeah, just to kind of keep it nice and flat and neat. And I just iron it to as close to the edge as I can. If I get off camera a little bit, I'm sorry. Basic equipment here. Basic equipment. Okay. Okay, so and see, like I said, the reason I clip that inside is because of that bulk that can happen right there. Okay, so there we have our mask. So we've got a little bit more to do. The next thing, I'm going to go ahead and turn this off and put it to the side here. I got to get that wire in here. And it goes right over the nose. And I kind of just eyeball it. I don't try to do too much measuring. I look at it. I decide where halfway is. Can you see that? I guess you can, kind of. And then I take some pins and I say, okay, I need to sew from here to here. And what we're doing is we're creating a little casing for the the wire to live in. So I'm going to stitch, let me use something to point with. I'm going to stitch down this way, along this way, and then back up this way. But I'm going to stitch here and go here and stop, shove my wire in, and then I'll finish it up here. So there goes that. And I do back stitch here because I don't want that wire coming out. And I usually do this edge, this pocket, 3/8 of an inch, so I can use my 3/8 inch guide here. And like I said, I don't, let me get to that point. So when I get to where the needle, the pin, straight pin's at, I stop and I leave my needle in the machine. And I'm going to pull out my pin. And this will allow me to twist around. I'm going to shove this in there. I try to shove it on the top side so that it's furthest away from the face. Sometimes it wants to get stuck, and so, whoops, ooh, we weren't supposed to do that. I'm going to take my foot off the pedal. If it gets stuck, just back up and do it again. And you see I'm shoving, oops, got stuck on the, okay, there it goes. So I kind of grab it over here, pull it through. And if I got to pull it some more, you can kind of turn it this way and feel it and push it on. I can feel that I've got it all the way to the end. Yes, I do. And I'm making sure that it's not in my needle path, because that'll cause you to break a needle. And now I'm going to close it up. And I'm going to back stitch because it needs it. And I am done. So I used white thread on the back so that it wouldn't be so obvious when you look at the back of it that there's a little casing there. It's not the most beautiful, but it'll work. And so that'll allow you to bend your mask and shape it to your face. And so basically you're done with that. And let me kind of clip that in there. Make sure that seam there is good. It's good enough. Now there's one more thing we have to do here. We have to iron these edges, and usually when I'm ironing, when I iron the edges, I iron this little closure as well, but I'm going to go ahead and do it separate right now. So all I do is I take one side and bend it in, and then I take the other side and bend it in. And again, I've already pre-clipped it so that bulk is not really big in that corner. And once I've got it bent in, or folded in, it's not bent but folded, I press it. You know, if that little raw edge bothers you, go ahead and tuck it some more. Give it a little deeper turn. It doesn't bother me so bad because I'm going to stitch it down. So, but I'm going to do it just because. Okay. So that side looks good. Let me fix this one. So just make it a little deeper to where my cut's at. Whoops. You're not supposed to drop it. So I may have cut too deep. No. I didn't do this one deep enough. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Actually, it might be easy just to fold one side down, press it in, and then do the other. No, it's an extra step. You can do that if you want to. And with the nose wire, you know, I make it 3 inches long, but if you want it longer, you can certainly do that. You know, I adapted the mask for my likings, and so you can do the same thing with yours. So here we go. You know, if you find something easier to do, do it. You're making a mask. That's important. Okay. Okay, so I changed my bobbin color back to red. And again, all I'm going to do here is turn this over. So I'm going to run my finger here so that I know that it's as flat as I can get it. And then I'm going to turn it over about 3/8 of an inch or so. And I'm going to stitch it just on the edge of the fashion fabric so that I can make a casing for the elastic. And I do want a back stitch here because we want it to take the pressure of the elastic. And again, I'm kind of sticking my finger in there to make sure it's flat because I've got to put something in there. And then I'm going to trim my thread. I kind of like to match my thread, but there's nothing says that you have to. So if you feel like stitching with one color all the way through, you stitch with one color all the way through. Just something I feel like I have to do. I have to match it. Anyway, again, I'm going to run my finger over. Kind of get it over a little bit. You can, oh, that doesn't look too good, does it? So let's fix that. Looks like the inside has to go a little wider. Okay, 3/8 of an inch or so. Okay, whoops. Take your foot off the gas. Alright. Back stitch a little bit there. And then we are basically done with our mask. You put as much detail as you want into it. You can do all kinds of fancy stitching. I don't have time for all that. Oops, my stitching got caught there, but it's okay. We'll just trim it down. Okay. We are done with our mask. The last thing you need to do is stitch the elastic, or not stitch it in, but thread it through the casings. So I'm going to take my elastic, I'm going to put it into this big needle that I have. It's probably a knitting sewing needle, but I found it in my kit and I think it's perfect. I kind of use the end to push it up there. If it gets too hard, I use the table to push down with and expose the needle and pull my elastic through. And then the other reason that I like to, again, keep this 12 inches is because this way it's adjustable. For example, I like it a little smaller because it'll fit my face snugger that way. My husband needed more ear space. This much, you know, it'll reach his ear and be comfortable. Mine has to be much closer. So whoever's wearing it has an option to tighten it. And again, I'm going to thread this one here, just a little, shove it through. Some people use a wire to help them get it through. Didn't really have a great wire, so I found this needle and that'll do it. Okay. Tie it whichever way you like to. And I also like to use 1/8 inch elastic, but this is all I had. So supplies are getting really thin out there. I've ordered some more 1/8 inch, but until 1/8 inch comes, the reason I like the 1/8 inch is much more comfortable behind the ears. But you're gonna have to get creative with stuff. I mean, there's people using ponytail holders and such. So, you know, if you get this to the right size and tighten it, then you can kind of actually just pull this in. I don't want to tighten the knot real hard because whoever gets this, I don't want them to, you know, I want them to be able to adjust it. And so they can, usually slips a little easier than this, but you get the idea. Once you pull it around, it'll just be a plain band. Let's see if this one will slip quicker for me. I don't think it will. Because again, I haven't pulled my knot real tight because I don't want to make it to where that they can't adjust it, which I'm tightening it as I'm doing it. So I'm going to stop there. But anyway, that's your finished mask. Again, I've been putting this on men and women. I made a smaller one for a child. You know, I just kind of took away inches and brought it in the width, and you just kind of have to try it and see if it's the right size. That's basically it. And we're done. And there's one more thing that you have to do. Before you give this to somebody, wash it. Put it in the washing machine. Do the least amount of handling. I've been using tongs to take them from the washer to the dryer. And then when I give it to them, I package it in a sandwich baggie using gloves, obviously. So, because you don't want to spread anything that you might have. And that's all of it.